Good evening, everybody. Welcome to tonight's 90 Days Around the World event. We are so excited to have Angels Envy with us here tonight. They're going to walk us through a really cool virtual tour. Well, it's not virtual for them because they're really there, so we're virtually touring with them. We're going to have a little tasting as well, and Kyle is going to talk to us a little bit about the family tree of the Angels Envy family and the people who started this brand that you all know and love. So we are very excited to have their team here with us tonight. So we actually have a few members of the Angels Envy team on the line tonight. So we're very excited that they could all join us. You also have our spirits marketing specialist, Mark Roy, here with us tonight. Now, I would also like to just mention that one of the members of the Angels Envy team who is here, Andy, she has the coolest job title. She is a whiskey guardian, so I think we should all strive to have a job title as cool as that someday. So I hope you all enjoy the presentation tonight. Wes from Angels Envy is going to kick things off for us. So Wes, I'm going to let you take it away. We're so excited to have you here.
Hey there, how's everybody doing? Everybody good? I can't see y'all.
We can hear you.
Can you hear me? Okay. Well, listen, I'm in a very bustling liquor store in Manhattan right now, signing bottles. So I apologize for all the noise, but I wanted to take a couple minutes just to say hello and thank you all for joining us tonight. And we've got a lot of fun things planned. We've got some great cocktails. We'll taste some Angels Envy. My son Kyle, my oldest of the 6 Henderson boys, will take you on a virtual tour of the distillery, which is unfortunately something that we're not able to do for anybody now while you're in town, but certainly you're invited to come back. But I think you'll get a really good gist of what we're all about as far as the distillery goes. And you know, we're just still little family bourbon brand. Started in Louisville, started in my basement with my dad. And, you know, we're just so blessed to be able to kind of live our dream and share bourbon with amazing people. So, but I'm not going to take a lot of time. I just want to say thank you so much for your support and have fun tonight. And, you know, it's great that we're able to get together like this.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We're so excited to have the brand here with us tonight. So, all right, Kyle, you're up. Virtual tour time.
Can you guys hear me, see me? All good?
Yep, we can hear you now.
Great. So I kind of want to explain the mask. You guys all understand we're under COVID times and all of the fun things. I have my cameraman, Nicholas, behind the camera, and we've got a lot of employees walking around. So I will be wearing this for the entire duration of our little experience here. So if you have any trouble hearing me, any questions, please do not hesitate to reach out and chat. Somebody will stop me. I will take my time. We will answer that, and we'll get whatever you need. Okay. So with that, we're going to reference my family tree just directly here behind me. You notice that my grandfather Lincoln and my dad Wes, who just spoke, right at the top of that patriarchal tree, and then 6 boys Hendersons: Kyle, Andrew, Connor, Spencer, Christian, and Ian. 4 of us work for the company right now, so that will be myself, Andrew, who is our lead distillery operator here, and actually he probably just cut out. He just finished his day off. And then Connor is our lead warehouse operator out of our new facility, new warehousing facility. And Spencer is one of the operators that works in that warehouse with them. So the 4 boys have all done different things around, blending, bottling, distillation, management, all kinds of stuff. So we're heavily involved, and we're really happy to be here with you. So with that, Angels Envy. I'm assuming because you guys are here, most of you are pretty familiar with what we do. We're a bourbon whiskey, but we don't just do bourbon like everybody else. We take a really cool turn with bourbon, and we kind of pioneered the new category of finished bourbon here in the United States a little over 10 years ago now. We take all of our bourbon whiskey and we put it into a used ruby port wine barrel to do what we call a proprietary finishing process and imbue some really nice rich color and aroma to that whiskey. Very reminiscent of what a lot of scotches have done for many, many, many years. Before we do that, we're going to pan around to our distillery. So Nicholas, if you can kind of show them a little bit of what we're going to be walking through later on. You can see this is where we make all of our bourbon. We've got a still, cooker, fermenters, there's grain outside. This 90,000 square foot building is where the magic is happening. Without the aging aspect of it, we age offsite. But I'm going to quickly go through some of the rules and regulations of what makes bourbon bourbon Again, most of you guys have probably heard this, I really hope. But we're going to recap quickly. We call them the ABCs of bourbon. They're relatively easy. A, bourbon has to be made in America, the United States of America. It does not have to be made just in Kentucky. However, about 94-95% of all the bourbon sold in the United States and in the world is made here in this great state. B is for the barrel. So that barrel that it goes into has to be a new charred oak barrel. It does not have to be white oak. It does not actually even have to be a barrel. Everybody uses a barrel, but it can be a bucket, it can be a shoe, it can be anything, but it has to be new charred oak. C is for corn. Corn is the most important ingredient to making your bourbon. It has to be at least 51% of the mash bill or of the grain bill. In the case of Angel's Envy, we're 72% corn, so well over that mandatory threshold. 72% corn, 18% rye, and 10% malted barley. And we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to the cooking process. D is for the distillation proof. We'll go into the distillery in just a moment, but the distillation proof legally cannot be higher than 160 or 80% alcohol. If you go above that, you now are into light whiskey territory. And if you get above 190, you're now in the vodka territory. And while we love light whiskey and we love vodka, that is not what we do here. E is for the entry proof. So once you come off the still at below 160, case of Angel's Envy, we come off the still at 138, 69% alcohol. Entry proof into that B barrel, that new charred white oak barrel, it cannot be above 125 proof or 62.5% alcohol. F is for, if I remember my, I forgot my alphabet. Oh my goodness. F. Oh, flavorings. You cannot have any flavorings or additives. You can only add water to that. And I think that's it. Oh, G is for gauging. So the gauging proof of the bottle cannot be below 80 proof or 40% alcohol. So United States, 51% corn, no higher than 160 on the still, no higher than 125 into the barrel. That barrel is a new charred oak container. You can't add anything other than water, and you cannot put it in the bottle below 80 proof. Make sense? Everything good? Now, bourbon is relatively unique. It is a protected class. As of May 4th, 1964, Congress passed a resolution that made bourbon an exclusive product, a native product of the United States. So very much similar to Scotch, where it's protected by Scotland, or Champagne, where it's protected by the DOCG in France, or tequila by Mexico. Very similar concept. Bourbon has to be made in the United States, and that is protected by many, many treaties around the U.S. But 1964 is when bourbon really resolutely, by an act of Congress, became really important to this great country. All right, we're going to take a little bit of a tour. So we are going to go and walk over to our cooking process. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to receive whole grain. So out to my right, you're all, I guess, left as you're looking. If Nicholas will stop at some point and pan out, there are 4 white silos outside. Those white silos, we receive 60,000 pounds of corn every single day, about 60,000 pounds of rye about every 3 or 4 days, and about 45,000 pounds of malt roughly once a week. That grain supplies our cooking process. We bring it in whole, we mill it on site, and then we deposit it into our cooker, usually 3 times a day. So we're going to cook about 10,000 gallons of water, about 21,000 pounds of corn, and we are going to have that corn milled into very fine flour. That corn is then boiled. We actually boil the bejesus out of it. We want to release all of those really tightly bound starches that are in that corn and gelatinize them. It's part of the process that begins the hydrolyzation, which eventually allows us to turn it into alcohol. So this is our cooker, and it's, I'll open it up. It's we're actually at the end of a cook right now, so they're pumping out a cook. So this is 6 hours later after they add all the corn and all the other grain. Then in here, we'd add the 10,000 gallons of water, 21,000 pounds of corn. We boil that corn. We cool it down to 170 degrees. At 170 degrees, we're going to add our 18% rye. And off the top of my head, I want to say it's about 5,643 pounds, if I remember correctly. That rye gets milled in. It's held at that temperature for about 10 minutes to release those starches, hydrolyze those starches. Then we're going to cool it down to 149, and that's a very important temperature because above 150 degrees, the next ingredient that we're going to add doesn't do its job. We're going to add malted barley, and it's about 2,200 pounds, if I remember correctly, 2,300 pounds actually, of malted barley. That malted barley has a very important enzyme in it. The process of germinating that barley and beginning it to grow creates two enzymes, alpha amylase and beta amylase. Those two enzymes convert the starches that we've just cooked out of the corn and the rye into simpler sugar. So it breaks those very long branch chain starches down into dextrins, glucose, fructose, maltose. Really what we're looking for is maltose. So very, very complex long chain starches into simpler starches. That starch is going to be very, very important. We're going to head over to one of our fermentation vessels. And sorry, Nicholas he's walking backwards. We're gonna go slow. Take our time. So we've taken all that. We've added the malted barley. We cool it down. We add yeast to it. Yeast likes to take that sugar, metabolize it, and turn it into three products. One is heat. One is carbon dioxide. And the last one is the important thing that we are looking for. That is the alcohol. So this fermentation, let me see here. This one's about 48 hours old. So you can see there's a little bit of grain cap sitting on the top. It's nice and warm. It's about 92 degrees, which is the top temperature we want to keep it at. And it's generating a lot of CO2. You can see those bubbles rising through. And for those of you who aren't here, it's nice and like literally there's heat radiating off the top of this, which is kind of cool. When it's cold in here, you just come stand by a fermenter and warm yourself up. Over the course of 72 hours, we're going to take all the sugar out of this mash and convert that sugar to alcohol. So it's about 20%, roughly 20% sugar when we put it in here and add the yeast. Over the course of 72 hours, that 20% sugar drops below 1%, and the alcohol content rises to about 10.5%. Roughly every gram of sugar produces about a half a gram of alcohol, give or take. When this fermentation is completed, we take it to the other side of the distillery and put it into our beer well. That beer well is going to hold the fermented mash. We call it beer. And by the German definition of beer, it is beer. It has water, grain, and yeast. Nothing else, nothing more, nice and simple. It's not a beer that you're going to want to drink, though. We've talked about it. We have a really awesome brewery across the street, Against the Grain, one of the largest regional brewers in this area now. Won many, many, many awards. And we like to compare our beers. Our beer tastes like stale cornflakes with a stale Bud Light poured on top of it. It is not appetizing. That is because we make that beer to be distilled. When it's distilled, it is full of flavor. In the case of the guys across the street, they make really good beer that you actually want to buy and drink. But when we distill that beer, the malt they use, the grains they use, the yeast they use, the lautering process, and all of those things generate completely different flavor compounds that when distilled, you don't want to drink that whiskey. We've tried it. Trust me, this doesn't work out very well. So we make a really horrible beer that we then distill in some really, really good whiskey. So we're going to head over to our still room where we're going to strip the alcohol out of that beer. Most important part of that is recovering all of that alcohol so we can turn that alcohol into bourbon for you over the course of the next, 5 or 6 years. All right, while we're walking, any questions?
So Kyle, we had a question on Facebook. Mark did already start to answer it, but I'm wondering if you might be able to elaborate a little bit.
Sure.
So somebody on Facebook is a fan of your port-aged bourbon, and so they are curious if bourbon needs to be in a new barrel to be called bourbon, how do you use the port barrel?
That's a very good question. So in the case of Angel's Envy, we do go into that new charred white oak barrel for about the first 4 to 6 to 7 years of our product, just like any other bourbon. What really sets Angel's Envy apart is once we are in that barrel for 6 years, we take it out and then put it into a second barrel. So we have created bourbon, and all we are doing is taking that bourbon and we are finishing it. So if you look at our bottle, it very clearly tells you what we're doing. It says Kentucky Straight Bourbon Whiskey finished in port wine barrels. So we've taken the bourbon, we finished it in port wine barrels. Legally, we can't separate those two statements. I can't walk up to you and say, I make bourbon. I actually say I make bourbon, and then I finish it in a port wine barrel. It's still a bourbon. It's just bourbon that has been done to it, finishing process, whatever we're doing. In our case, it's just a secondary cask for about 6 months, and it imbues just a little bit of that richness and that fruitiness from the wine. So I think that answers that question, I hope.
Yeah, that was great. Thank you. And
Perfect.
so we've been getting a few comments from people just loving the tour so far, that they think the facility is amazing, and they're curious, how old is it?
This distillery is just over 4 years. So in the middle of September in 2016, we first turned the plant on. It took us about 3 years to build it because the building we are in was, when we bought it in 2013, had been abandoned for about 30 years. So the roof had collapsed, a lot of structural issues, but it was originally built in 1902. So it's a much older building, at least for the U.S. You know, it's not European old, but it's definitely old for the U.S. And we restored that building over the course of 2 years, and then after restoration, we then put a distillery in the inside of it. So in 2016, we started distilling, and yeah, we just celebrated 4 years. We sampled our first barrel we filled on September 13th of 2016, so it was 4 years old in September. It wasn't too bad. I definitely think the stuff we started making about this time in November much better. So, and I know that question will come up eventually. What you have in the bottle now is not distilled here. We like most of our whiskeys to be between 5 and 6 years old plus a finishing process. So roughly this time next year, we'll begin dumping the whiskey that was distilled here and to go into port barrels. And then I'd say spring of 2022, we'll start to have the bourbon that was distilled here in the bottle.
Awesome.
Good.
Thank you so much. I think
Absolutely.
you should show us more of the
We're going
fabulous
to.
facility.
So what you see behind me, I'm actually going to have Nicholas walk over the front and pan around. I really want you to look at this column still. The column still is the workhorse of this distillery. It takes all of the beer that we're producing, and that's about 35 to 40,000 gallons of beer per day, and it strips the alcohol out of it. We're blasting steam through this on a series of 19 copper trays that is stripping the alcohol as the steam rises. So we're putting 10% beer in, and we're taking 128 proof low wine. It's not new make at this point, low wine off. That low wine, all we're doing is taking as much alcohol as we can out, all the congeners, all the heads, all the tails, all the flavors, anything you can possibly get out of that grain, we're going to strip it out. And then we're going to deposit it into a pot still on the floor down below us. We might be able to, when we go back outside, might be able to pan out and show you guys that. We're going to deposit it on the pot still on the floor down below us, and that pot still is going to continuously be filled and continuously be emptied. We're going to refine that. We call it double distillation. That refinement is going to take that proof from 128 proof and bring it up to 138 proof. That 138 proof allows us to bring out the fruity notes, cut down a little bit of the grainy fusely oil notes, and really brighten that spirit. And at that point, it comes down this condenser, and through this spirit safe, which is off for some reason, they must be doing some maintenance on it, because normally the spirit safe has alcohol flowing through it. So this is a very beautiful piece of artwork that prior to 1984 looked very, very different. You've probably seen them if you've ever been to an older distillery, a nice square box with a bunch of locks on them and 2 pipes, 1 pipe from the column, 1 pipe from the doubler. And the government man would come in, and this is where they would gauge and measure the amount of tax that you owed when you distilled alcohol. After the 1980s, they made it a more of an honor system, and we just reported every 2 weeks and paid taxes based on an honor system. They come and audit our records every 3 years and fine you if you lied, basically. So this spirit safe, we were given the opportunity to make it a really cool piece of art. So it's a replica copper bottle with the sight glass inside, and the alcohol spills from within. And then this is deposited via a pump and some piping to the back of our plant before it goes into a barrel. Yeah, so this is our beautiful facility. So now I know I've talked for almost 20 minutes now. I know you guys are thirsty, so I'm going to throw it over to our whiskey guardian, and she is going to walk you through a little bit of a tasting, wet your palate, and when we come back, we're going to talk about the aging process and our finishing process and how we get that really cool flavor that you guys are going to enjoy, okay? So I'll see you in a minute.
Thanks, Kyle. See you soon.
All right, can everyone hear me now? Awesome. My name is Andy, like Kyle said. I'm a whiskey guardian here in Philadelphia. That just kind of means I'm like a brand ambassador for the brand. I go around Philadelphia, the suburbs, New Jersey, and spread the good word of Angel's Envy, get people trying it, tasting it, and falling in love with it just like I did. So if you guys have a bottle at home, we'll do a little tasting together. This is our port finished bourbon. Fun fact, when you uncork your bottle, it'll say, I don't know if you can see that, but it'll say expression 1010 on every cork. So legend has it that Angel's Envy was supposed to be released on October 10th, 2010, 1010. There's all these branding materials, 1010, like it's coming. Everyone was so excited. So 1010 comes around and our founder, Lincoln Henderson, Kyle's grandfather, tasted it and was like, you know what, I don't think it's ready. It doesn't taste as good as it can taste. It needs a little more time. So everyone's like, well, everything says 1010. We have all these corks. We've got the bottles, every 1010. Like, we have to release it. It's like, no, my name is literally on every bottle. It's not ready. So they waited an additional 6 months to release it in April of the following year. And we kept the 1010 on the corks just as a little testament to like, hey, we're giving you the best product that we can every time. This is the good stuff. Fun fact. But if you guys have some bourbon at home, we'll do a little tasting. Tasting bourbon is kind of similar to tasting wine. We call it the Kentucky Chew. We're in Kentucky. But the first thing you want to do, get your nose in there. Keep your mouth open when you breathe in through your nose. It engages all your olfactory senses. You know, your nose and your mouth are connected so that the alcohol vapors will dissipate off your palate and you can just get the aromas without kind of like burning your nose. So take a little sniff. Do it a couple times. Personally, I get a lot of baking spice, vanilla, caramel, some toast, little bit of raisin. Then when we go to do our Kentucky Chew, what you're gonna do is put a little bit in your mouth and just swallow. Rinse everything from your palate from the day. You know, you just had dinner or lunch or a cup of coffee, and that'll just rinse that from your palate. You can breathe out through your nose after you swallow to really engage those senses. Get that aroma in the back. Now, when we do it again, I'm gonna put a little in our mouth and just not really swish it, so you're not gargling mouthwash, you know, but just move it around, have it hit all the areas of your mouth because you do have different receptors in different parts of your mouth, so you get different flavors from different areas. Breathe out again. What you'll find with our bourbon is because of that 6-month port finish, it is super, super smooth, nice round edges. It's a great bourbon for beginner drinkers who are just maybe getting into brown spirits, as well as more advanced drinkers, because it has qualities that you don't find in other bourbons. With that port finish, we get a lot of dark cherries and plums, kind of like dark red fruits. Dark chocolate, definitely like bitter dark chocolate, nuts, almonds, walnuts, the toast from the aroma is coming through as well. And it's just a great bourbon for everyone. Now I'm going to show you guys how to make a cocktail with it. This is something that I just whipped up of my own thinking. It's like, oh, it's Christmas time. You know, it's getting cold up here in the Northeast. What do we want to drink that's going to have those like holiday warming flavors? So I'm calling it a chocolate cherry Alexander because it's kind of a riff on a brandy Alexander, minus the brandy, of course. So we're going to start with 1.5 ounces of our port finish Angel's Envy bourbon. Next, we're going to do a 1/2 ounce of white creme de cacao. It's pretty common in stores. You can kind of find it anywhere. If they only have the brown creme de cacao, it's exactly the same flavor, just brown food coloring. So let's just change the color of your cocktail. All right, next we're going to use some ruby port. It just enhances the flavors of that ruby port finished bourbon so nicely, brings out a really nice kind of dark cherry and chocolate flavor. Oh, and if I didn't mention, 1.5 ounces of the bourbon. a half ounce of the creme de cacao, and a half ounce of the port finished, or of the ruby port. Depending on the quality of your port, some are a little boozier, some are a little sweeter. Test your port if it's not too sweet. Like mine is not, I'm gonna add a little half ounce of simple syrup. Just give it a little extra sweetness. And then we're going to do 1 ounce of heavy cream. It's gonna be kind of like a chocolate cherry, boozy, delicious milkshake. All right, next we get our ice. And if you don't have 7 shakers at home, you can definitely just do like a mason jar, Tupperware, anything that seals tightly. And we're gonna give it a hard shake because we wanna really emulsify that cream. Normally I shake my cocktails for about 8 to 10 seconds. With the cream, it can go a little bit longer. It won't hurt at all. I have my beautiful Angel's Envy strainer. Because we use the cream, I'm going to do a double strainer, so I'm going to pour it through both just to really get a nice creamy flavor. All right, and to garnish, we're going to take a whole nutmeg and a microplane. If you don't have that, you can do just a little sprinkle of ground nutmeg. If you don't have that, cinnamon, any kind of fall spice is really just going to be delicious and really add to the aroma as you put the glass towards your mouth. As you can see, we have a beautiful pink, chocolatey, nutmeg, baking spice, delicious drink for this holiday season. Tastes like a boozy, delicious milkshake. I will post this on my Instagram later this evening in case you guys want to get the specs to make it at home. You can find that on Instagram at Philly Whiskey Guardian, whiskey with an E in it. And the last thing I have for you guys is our chocolate pairings. They are available at the distillery as well as shop.angelsenvy.com. So there's pairings for the bourbon as well as the rye. I have the milk chocolate orange, and I think they're just gonna go really, really awesome with this chocolate cherry cocktail. Thanks.
Okay, so Andy, how do you pass me the drink through the computer? How do we make that happen?
See, you have to get a drink and then I'll hand it over, and then it's like a trick with the screen and you pretend to grab it.
Awesome.
You know, the person that invents that is going to be like a trizillionaire. Molecular drink transport.
We'll get there.
Okay. Thank you for that. Now, I'm sure all of you are a little more moist and you've quenched your thirst and everybody's feeling a little better, right? Yeah? Oh, okay, good. So, we we talked about the distillation process. So everything that we just walked through takes about 4 days. We bring in the grain, we cook it, ferment it, distill it. 4 days of time. All of those wonderful flavors that you get out of that whiskey, some of that was developed in that 4 days. I'd say about 20 to 25% of that was developed in the 4 days. That's part of our grain mash bill. That's part of our yeast and the flavor components of the fermentation and distillation. The other 75% of the flavor components that you're getting out of a drink of Angel's Envy or any other whiskey that you may try is coming from the maturation process. Now, this is not an actual maturing warehouse, I promise. We don't store any barrels downtown, mainly because we've got about 150,000 of them spaced over about 15 different buildings. And the city and the mayor didn't take too kindly on, one, taking over the entirety of downtown with barrel warehouses, and two, having that much flammable alcohol in the middle of a city is not a good idea either. So our barrel warehouse is about 45 minutes to the northeast of here in Henry County. It's actually where Connor and Spencer, my two middle brothers work at, and they manage our inventory, put it away, and then when it ages, they bring it back here for us to dump. But that aging process is very, very important. So this rick up above me is how we age the majority of our barrels. It's put into that white charred American oak, and it sits there for about 5 or 6 years. We don't touch it. We don't rotate our barrels. We don't heat cycle our warehouses. It sits there and lets nature do its job. So it's going to have natural ventilation, naturally hot in the summer, naturally cold in the winter. And if I heard correctly, you guys had 60-degree weather this morning, which is ridiculous because it got in the 20s here in Louisville last night. I'm rather jealous. But that natural heating and cooling actually causes pressure differentials from the inside the barrel. So it's a sealed, relatively sealed vessel. And when it gets cold, your whiskey contracts, and when it gets hot, your whiskey expands. And that contraction and expansion actually forces the alcohol and the water to penetrate the wood. The alcohol and the water are going to dissolve different chemical substrates in that wood, which then are absorbed into the liquid, and when the whiskey contracts again, it sucks all that chemical substrate that is dissolved into the liquid within the inside of the barrel. And there is oxygen in the inside of that barrel, and that oxygen process interacts with the chemicals in the whiskey. It drives an oxidation chemical reaction known as esterification. That esterification generates a lot of fruity, floral, really wonderful fruit notes, candied fruit, things like that. The sad part about that process is that heating and cooling, some of that whiskey, especially in the summer when it gets hot, actually passes all the way through that barrel. And that whiskey escapes, and it actually comes out of the wood. And so you can see, this is probably old enough. See one of these that had, well, maybe not. We may have cleaned these up for display, but okay, here we got a few. So you can see a few of these where that whiskey seeped, literally seeped out of the wood, and you got that caramel kind of looking color on there. That's the color and the flavor that's dried, and all the alcohol and water is evaporated. That evaporation process is known as the angel's share. Here in the state of Kentucky, in our climate region, we lose about 3 to 5% of every barrel every year during aging. So in the case of Angel's Envy, on a 5-year-old whiskey, if we put 53 gallons in there today, in 5 years, only 75% or so of that is left. We lose 25% of that alcohol to the angel share. But that's really important. That evaporation process concentrates a lot of really good flavors. And as my grandfather liked to say, you know, the angels got their share, but they're pretty envious of what we've got left in the barrel. And that's kind of where the name Angel's Envy came from. The angels are envious of what we still have in our barrel. They got their cut, but we have our own. So Angel's Envy, we talked about the standard aging process. Rick. Yeah, you can hear me? Okay, cool. I tapped my headphone and I went crazy. The standard Rick aging process, 4 to 5 years, just like that. Normally a lot more barrels, about 22,000 barrels in a warehouse. And then we take it out of the warehouse, we bring it back to this facility, and then we put it in one of these barrels. This is one of our port wine barrels. And this is really where Angel's Envy begins to separate itself and differentiate. And we really see why Angel's Envy makes it what it is. We do this proprietary finishing process here on site. We take the bourbon whiskey, we dump about 70 to 80 barrels together into a tank, and then we place that into about 40 port wine barrels. These barrels are made from either French or Hungarian oak in the Douro Valley of Portugal, and it is used to age port wine for about 2 years, and then we get those barrels, bring them here, we put our whiskey in there for about 6 months, and a lot of those ripe fruits and dried fruits and the chocolate notes that you get out of the whiskey are actually coming from this port wine barrel. We take it out of that barrel, we put it into a tank, we add water, we filter the carbon out, and the char that's left from the bourbon barrels and the port barrels, and then we put it in the bottle at 86.6 proof and ship it out. Now I can say all over the U.S. and not all over the world, but we're getting there. We're in about 6 countries internationally, so we're starting to grow internationally, and you know that's Angel's Envy. So with that, I'm going to open it up to you guys. Have any more questions or anything else I can walk you through or show you?
Yeah, Kyle. So somebody is curious. Why is Angel's Envy Rye not a straight whiskey, despite Angel's Envy Bourbon being a straight whiskey?
Mainly because of the finishing process that we go through. We get a lot of questions about that because people want to know, how do you finish your whiskeys? The port wine whiskey's relatively straightforward, goes in the port barrel. We don't tell you what kind of port, exactly where it comes from, the specifications of the port. Same for the rum barrel. The rum barrel that we're using, very unique rum. We've partnered with Plantation and with Bacardi to supply very specific rum profiles, and the way and the method that we finish it in, extremely proprietary. But because of our classification as a distilled spirit specialty, we're actually not allowed to put straight on the label for that one.
Awesome. So this next question is kind of a combo Kyle Mark question.
Sure.
So somebody would like to know if you can talk to us a little bit more about the cask strength. And the part of the question for Mark is, which New Hampshire Liquor and Wine outlets can I get it at?
So that's a relatively easy one. When we first dumped our very first barrel in March of 2011, after we delayed and my grandfather was like, it's not ready yet, not ready yet. My dad and I, my grandfather there, we were dumping the barrels and tasting it. And Matt goes, man, this would be really good as like a single barrel cask strength. And this was before we'd even launched the brand. We hadn't even bottled the first product to go to market as the flagship Angel's Envy. And he's already talking about the next iteration. So we kind of kept that in our back pocket. And the next year in 2012, we're dumping more barrels. We're continually coming through. And he goes, I really want to do this single barrel or cask strength. And at the time, and even today, we're not huge proponents of single barrels because we really want to marry different barrels together, blend different barrels together to balance the profile to what we're looking for. So we decided to take, I think that year was 3 barrels. We took 3 of our first barrels. So almost 2 years finished. It was filled in 2010. We dumped them in 2012, blended them together, and bottled them at barrel proof. And it ended up being 600 bottles exactly. No extras. No, we're not hiding anything. 600 bottles. And we got this really cool solid pine box from a manufacturer down in Texas. And we put a special foil label on the bottle, put it in this box, and we sold it in Tennessee and Kentucky. And we're like, okay, that was good. That was cool. We'll see how it does. And it sold pretty well. 600 bottles, and it's going to sell out relatively quickly anyways, not a whole lot of volume. And in, I want to say February or March of 2013, we got a call from probably Paul Pacult, somebody with his company saying, hey, we've actually named you guys the #1 spirit in the world. So Paul publishes a self-funded magazine and rates whiskeys and vodkas and everything, not just whiskeys, but everything. And that year we tied for first place with the Highland Park 25. And that's kind of when my dad went, I told you so. I knew this would be good. And we decided to grow that portfolio. So we're actually coming up on, this year was our 9th release of cask strength. So every year, as we're dumping barrels to go into our flagship port Prentice bourbon, we find some really special barrels, unique barrels, cool taste. Hey, that's a little different. We set that aside. And in June and July of every year, we go through all the barrels we set aside and we narrow that down and pick out, 20, 30, 40. I think this year was 54 or 56 barrels. And we dump those barrels together. And whatever the proof is, whatever the flavor profile is, that is cask strength for the year. So this year, don't quote me on it, but I think it was 122.4 proof. We've done a lot of them. I'm trying to remember the proofs, and I get them mixed up. We did about 17,000 bottles, and this is the first year that it went to all 50 states in the U.S. So with that, I will hand it back over to Mark, and he can tell you where you can find it, because I have no idea.
Well, thanks, Kyle. Now you got everybody salivating over the cask strength. As he mentioned, it went to all 50 states this year. So in the past, with our relationship with Kyle and the local broker here, Southern Glaciers Wine and Spirits, we've been lucky enough to get this allocation pretty regularly since they started the program. I will let you know we don't have any at this time. It is ETA to come within the next week, I believe. As you can imagine, with COVID and delivery and things like that, we've seen some delays getting product into the warehouse. So I cannot tell you which stores it will be in. I can tell you that we will not list this product on our website due to the limited allocation and the fact that we just launched curbside and online ordering. We kind of keep it hidden from that, for lack of a better term. So our in-store customers, we treat it like an Easter egg hunt. If they're lucky enough to go into one of our larger locations, they can usually get their hands on one of these bottles. They retail right around $200 for us. So if you're out in the stores over the next couple of weeks, certainly keep an eye out or talk to one of our great workers out in the stores, and they may be able to lead you to one of these fine bottles that you can get your hands on for the holidays.
Awesome. Well,
Thanks.
good. Any other questions?
So Kyle, question from me. Do you think
Okay.
that it's time for our giveaway to be announced, or do you think we should make everybody wait a little longer?
I mean, I've still got some time on my clock, so we should probably wait a little longer.
All right, so that's your little hint, everybody. Stick around. There's going to be a giveaway in a little while.
So one thing I do want to talk about is, we talked about the bourbon. We talked a little bit about the rye that's finished in rum barrels. We talked about the cask strength. We also do a lot of different innovations. So over the last, I guess, 2.5, 3 years, we've released a couple of new products, part of our cellar collection. And so 2 years ago, it was a bourbon that was finished in Oloroso sherry casks, and that was released here at the distillery only. Was it last year? God, actually, it was in January of this year, but this year has felt like about a decade. So a decade ago in January, we released a very special port finish. It was a 10-year-old bourbon that was finished for 10 months in a tawny port wine barrel, so a little bit older port, drier port, different port influence. And that was released in about 5 or 6 markets. And then about, what is now? It's December. So 3, 4 months ago in August, we released our Founders Collection. It was our 10th anniversary of filling our very first port barrel on August 19th of 2020. We filled our first one in 2010. So we released a very unique bottle, a custom crystal decanter that was a bourbon whiskey that was then finished in virgin Mizunara Japanese oak barrels for 2 years. Really unique, very rare wood that imbues some incredible aromas and incredible sensory notes to that whiskey. And I say all of this so that if you want to know what we're doing and what's coming next, because we've always got a few projects ongoing, we really want you to join our 500 Main Club, 500main.angelsenvy.com, very simple. And you get kind of a first access. I think we just, actually this weekend it just expired. We gave them a 20% discount on our e-commerce store. And we really don't bother you that much. You get an email maybe once a month. It's not too crazy. I send out videos, ask the experts. We talk to people around the distillery. We talk a little more in-depth science about how we do and what we do. So if you guys want to learn more about what we do for the bourbon, for the rum, for the rye, for the cask strength, any new releases, go ahead and join 500 Main. And then we talk about cask. If you get a cask bottle, there's a registration card in there. Do that registration card, join 500 Main, and you may or may not see a cool thing come your way. So if you get one, do that. All right, I'm ready now. We're ready. We can do the question. Okay. Everybody listening?
Oh, okay, everybody. So Kyle has a really cool giveaway for you tonight. And if you've been paying close attention, you already know the answer. He has given you the answer to the trivia question that he's about to ask. And the person who answers correctly first in the chat here on Zoom will be the winner. So for those of you watching on Facebook, please be sure to pre-register for future 90 Days Around the World events so you can be eligible to win these really cool brand-specific giveaways. So once Kyle announces the giveaway and the trivia question, I'll go ahead and give everybody the code word for our Ultimate Home Bar giveaway too, because everybody's eligible for that. All right, Kyle, I'm ready to monitor the responses.
Okay. So if you were here early on, this is going to be real easy. What year did Congress pass a resolution naming bourbon the native spirit of the United States? What year?
Oh my gosh, so many answers.
Are any of them right?
Let's see. Yep. David H. here on Zoom, you were the first one to answer correctly. The year was 1964.
Wonderful.
We did have a couple people respond after with the exact date. So kudos to you guys for remembering May 4th, 64. All right, Kyle, tell them what they're winning. I mean, not they, just David, the winner.
I'll be honest, I'm not sure. What are we giving him?
Oh my gosh, you're signing a bottle and sending it to him.
Am I? I already drank that.
Oh, sorry,
I'm
David.
kidding. Yes, we will. we're gonna sign a few things. It'll be more than just a bottle. I may throw some extra stuff in there, but a bottle for sure. And we're gonna get connected, and we'll make sure it gets your way. Okay. So thank you so much for participating.
All right, so David, if you want to, in the chat bar, send me your email address. I'll get that over to Kyle and his team so they can connect with you.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
All right, if you loved that giveaway, here's the next one. This is the one that we are sponsoring throughout the 90 Days Around the World promotion, our Ultimate Home Bar. So the code word for tonight, for those of you playing along, David has also given you the answer to that, and he didn't even know. It is his grandfather's name, Lincoln. So code word for tonight is Lincoln. Enter that into your Scavify Passport app, and you'll get 100 points for attending tonight's event. And that gets you 100 points closer to gaining your entry for the Ultimate Home Bar Sweepstakes. So that Ultimate Home Bar Sweepstakes, the winner is going to receive a $2,500 gift card to our stores to create their own Ultimate Home Bar. So, Mark, if you don't mind, what do you think people need in their own Ultimate Home Bar? So whoever wins, what do you think they should pick up first?
Well, I think if you're part of this 90-day program, like Tracy and David and everybody else that's been on for these events, certainly one of the products tonight would be Angel's Envy that I'd have on my bar back. We've definitely had some great products. Your home bar has to have everything for all your family and guests that come over. So you need your vodkas, you need your gins, your scotches, your bourbons, your ryes. I'm certainly here to help anybody that needs my assistance. I don't claim to be the biggest expert in the world, but I have been in the liquor business for about 28 years. So I could certainly help you set up your home bar. As you can see, I've got a little collection of my own back here. So I'm here to help anybody. I'd be super excited for somebody that wins this prize, but we will get you upset. I'll get you set up with one of the most amazing home bars that you'll have around for sure.
Awesome. Thanks, Mark. And for those of you who also like wine, if you are the winner of the Ultimate Home Bar, in addition to spending some quality, probably phone time with Mark, picking some items for your Ultimate Home Bar, you also get to hang out with Lisa or Chad to pick some wines. So get excited, play along, earn your points for tonight with code word Lincoln. All right, Kyle, back to you.
Well, guys, I want to thank you for spending some time with us. We talked about, a little bit of distillation. We talked about some aging. You spoke with some amazing of our Whiskey Guardian team to talk about the tasting and some cocktails. And by the way, seriously, follow her on Instagram. Some of the stuff they're putting out is really, really, really neat. We've got a really good community of bartenders and networking that we provide for anybody in any region to learn about our brands. Join us on 500 Main. You can follow me on Instagram at Main Street Bourbon Maker. You can follow my dad, Kentucky Bourbon Maker. A lot of us are very active in a lot of different things. And we really like hearing from you guys. So if you have any more questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. And with that, I bid you adieu, and I hope you have a wonderful evening.
Awesome. Thank you, Kyle. And thank you to everybody who joined us at Angel's Envy tonight. It was so great that we got to see your dad, hang out with Andy. The cocktail looked amazing. I hope you all will follow her on Instagram. I posted her Instagram handle in the chat, so you can go ahead and follow her. We hope you all really enjoyed tonight's presentation. We've got some other great events coming up this week as well, so we hope you'll tune in again later on in the week for some more spirits tastings. We are so excited about this 90 days program. We're now in our 5th week. It's been going really well. You guys have been providing us with some great feedback too. So please be sure to keep the questions and the comments coming, play along with the Passport app, and register for future events so you can win cool prizes. The URL to find out all about the Ultimate Home Bar Sweeps and the Passport app is right here on your screen. It's 90daysaroundtheworld.com. So thank you again to Kyle, the whole Angel's Envy team, Mark. We also had Sean behind the scenes tonight responding to some questions. So thank you, Sean, and we will see you all tomorrow night. Bye-bye.